Gen X fathers, if you grew up in the 80s, you know what I'm talking about. Tough, resilient, no nonsense. A number of years ago, I received a phone call from my brother, and he said, "Hey bro, someone assaulted Dad." My dad was 75 years old at the time, and of course, I was worried about him. I mean, who would pick on a 75-year-old man? I asked myself. I asked my brother what happened. He says, well, Dad was heading to a friend's restaurant and bar, and the bouncer pushed Dad. And I said, what happened? He said, well, Dad laid him out. And that moment reminded me about what my dad was really like, the man that I knew growing up. My dad, he was a very tough individual, right? He was a martial arts expert, and he trained some of the toughest guys that I know. And he had an extremely tough mindset. For my father, he never backed down from a challenge, whether it was in business or whether he had to protect himself or the family. And he showed a lot of discipline and resilience throughout those years. He was not the best with money, and probably put the family in a lot of financial stress with his decisions in my childhood, right? But he was a great salesperson. He knew how to relate to people. And the one thing good about my father was he was able to generate enough money if he needed it, right? And I can't say things were very rosy when we were growing up. We were living day to day. But my father came from a generation that quitting wasn't an option. And he had this mindset that when things get tough, you just push through it. And I think a lot of Gen X dads were like that. And growing up with him was not fun. I remember resenting him a lot. He was extremely tough on me. And he never praised me. He never said, I love you, son. But he expected 100% effort on my part. And I definitely didn't get a free ride. And at times I thought that he was a little bit overly tough on all of us. He didn't really smile or laugh a lot, and everything was he was very stoic. But, my father, as I got older, I understood that he did that for a reason. And he wanted me to be able to stand on my own 2 feet when I became an adult, because he knew how tough it was as an adult. And he didn't want me to fold when times got tough. And there are many times when I was an adult, I'm glad he was tough on me. And when I heard about my father, and this incident, I was shocked. I mean, he was 75 years old, and what had happened was he was going to visit a friend, a business associate who owned a pub and a restaurant. And as he entered the pub, a 28-year-old, 6'4" bouncer told him, you cannot go in. And my father said, well, I know the owner. And so my father proceeded to walk past them, and the bouncer grabbed him and pushed him back and said, you're not going in. And I don't know what possessed the guy to push a 75-year-old man, but my father said sternly, "Hey, don't push me again." And the bouncer pushed him. And that's when my dad, one punch, laid him out in the chest. So I was flabbergasted. I thought to myself, I was worried about my dad getting hurt. I never thought that he was going to lay out a 20-year-old bouncer. I mean, my dad's past his prime, but I guess when you trained all your life, you never lose your power, even though he's probably a shell of himself and not as fast. But I think that sums up a lot of fathers' mentality at that time. And they valued toughness. A lot of Gen X fathers, I know, they weren't very expressive. And they were very tough men and incredibly resilient. And I think you see that reflected in the movies at the time. Rocky, Rambo, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Chuck Norris, Jean-Claude Van Damme, all those, and even in the 70s, you had Charles Bronson and Clint Eastwood, and we don't see a lot of those movies anymore, right? And so I think it was definitely a reflection of the times, and in the 80s. Today my father is 83 years old, and sometimes it's really hard to reconcile, how my father is today to the man he once was. I mean, when I see him now and I see him shuffling around the house and he can, barely get up the stairs, I learned to understand and appreciate, what he has taught me, no matter how I felt at the time. And even though he didn't say it at the time, he didn't say he loved me, son, or he didn't say anything like that to show that he loved me. But I now know that he did. He just showed it in his way. And that's probably one of the biggest gifts I've received from my father. And it took me years later to understand it because I had resented him for so many years. And I think because of him is the reason why I've achieved what I've achieved today. So I would love to hear what was it like growing up in the 80s with your father, and what lessons did you learn from him? I would like to hear from you, so comment below and share your story. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And if you like my videos, please check out the next one. All right? I'll talk to you later. Take care for now.